Hello and welcome again to another interview for the series in conversation with me, Ollie Morris. Now today we have a very special guest, Charlie Mussett, who is the Senior Operations Manager at the Great Wine Company. Hello, Charlie. What's it about the event industry that initially interested you, the events industry?
I think it's the buzz of an event. You can get, we all get as punters, we all get the buzz of an event by going to something. It can change. You come back from something and your mind is still at that event. It might be a temporary change, it might be a lasting change, it might be a lifestyle change, and what you pick up from it, but you get something out of it. I've always liked that. I've always liked that. That feeling of anticipation that you're looking towards something, and that something's happened. And I like organising stuff. I like sorting stuff out. I like I realised that I enjoyed the behind the scenes bit and working with people to make things happen, and the networking and the cajoling and the realizing that some people are going to come and say yes and other people are going to do harder work and you got to work on them. And I do that in my student years through trying to get people out, after we gone and played matches and trying to, even just like, creating nights out and creating that buzz and creating that team ethos. You could see that you see the benefits of the social side of things. So you realize the impact that events can have.
So let's go back a few years to a younger Charlie. But how did you actually get into the events industry, and how did you find your first role?
Well, there wasn't the option of things like event management degrees then. I did a history degree, which I went to university to do a degree that I was interested in, have the university experience, which was kind of typical for its time. And there weren't as many vocational degrees. There were some business studies, others that people did. But at university, I was a rubbish rugby player, but I was a very key member of my rugby club, and I was a social sec, and I organised the dinners and balls and tour and stuff like that, and really liked that. And and towards the end of it, I thought, I realised that organising events. You started looking at careers. Organising events was a thing, and then it seemed to be part of the PR and marketing world. So I was applying to a few agencies, trying to get some time there. My dad had said, look, I'll kind of fund you for 6 months if you can get yourself in somewhere, and it didn't happen. So I couldn't. I knew what I wanted to do. So then I got a couple of stopgap jobs, and then I happened to see after one job an advert for something at the University of Northumbria in the Newcastle Business School, their small business unit, and it was a placement. It was a marketing thing. So I got myself onto that, and at the end of it, they said whoever does well within this, there's a kind of placement coming out of it. And that placement was with a company called NRN that was set up by the guy who had been the chief exec of the National Garden Festival at Gateshead in 1990. And then he set up this kind of leisure consultancy, and they had the gig to do the sponsorship and event management for the Cutty Sark Tall Ships Race when it came to Newcastle in '93. So I worked for them. So I did my first event, my first year of working towards an event and planning stages and fireworks and all kinds of things. I did that on dole plus a tenner. So that was kind of the government-funded training scheme where I was put into this small agency. Then they took me on, and I did a few more years with them. Went to Aberdeen and Edinburgh to run the event side of the Tall Ships Race there, and did some other things for some visitor attractions. So we did some marketing work at the same time. Worked with quite a few of the Millennium projects and fundraising. And then I moved out of that. After deciding I wanted to work on something different, but loved living in the northeast. Wanted to stay up here, great part of the world, and managed to get a job with Nova International, which now renamed as the Great Wine Company, and working on our portfolio of mass participation events up and down the land.
What would you consider your career highlight then? It stands out for you.
There've been a number of things. I mean, working in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa for the Great Ethiopian Run was.
Wow.
It was pretty amazing. The first year we did that, Ethiopia has produced, many of the world's greatest distance runners, and the general caliber of running amongst the mass populace is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And it was such an experience going out there, and an amazing team. We helped, we worked out there for I think we worked closely with them for about 8 years, and still retain a link and support them now. But we helped working with the local team out there, establish them, and Ermias, who is the general manager now of the Great Ethiopian Run, he started out in the team there, and we worked with him, and he's developed such a fantastic fantastic model out there. but it was so different. And the Ethiopians knew running so well, but they didn't know mass running because they didn't have mass running. So putting that first mass event on, which I think it was meant to be 20,000 in the first year. I can't, but we had double.
Oh wow! Okay.
And we had in Mescal Square in the heart of Addis. There's a 14-lane road that goes through the heart of Mescal Square, and we had about half of that with some start going from different lanes over it. And we had there was so much. The atmosphere was amazing. Chanting, dancing, singing, and a real buzz about it. But it was a wave of humanity. Wasn't standing still. When we start line at a mass run, and we had about 45 minutes of false starts.
Oh really?
False starts going on, and it was incredibly exciting and just an amazing thing to be part of.
If you think back on challenging events or challenging moments during your career, what was one of those that stands out, and would you deal with them differently, or have you learned from those experiences?
Well, one of the most one of the things that always, when people talk about the feeling of being stressed, I can remember we used to do for a few years we did some work with football. So we used to do the playoffs at Wembley for the Nationwide Football League. Okay. We used to do it was one of my colleagues, David Hart. He implemented the whole the manager of the month. That whole setup, and we did lots of work with Nationwide Building Society then, and we used to go down to Wembley and work on that. And then through that, we worked on the BBC Match of the Day live show for 3 years at the NEC. So this was a football consumer show. It doesn't happen now, but so there'd be football brands there, and we had footballers and celebs and others coming in to do play five-a-side, and we did a launch of the England kit, loads of things there. And one year we built an indoor five-a-side court, and the idea was to get celeb games on it. And so lots of time spent. There's loads of people that love playing football, as you see with Soccer Aid now. So we lots of Coronation Street and Emmerdale type stars, and former sports people coming to do it as well. People in the world of TV and radio. And I can remember waiting on. There was one particular day where most of the teams were all coming down from Manchester. A load of people in the northwest, so lots of the Corrie team and others, and the bus was delayed. And I had like an indoor stadium full of people. Oh. And a commentator said, looking at me, saying like, how much can I spin this out? And I'm talking to one of my team who's on the bus on the phone, saying like, I can see the signs for the NEC. And just as they came in and getting them changed and getting them out there, and I looked back after that and thought, how what would you have done differently? And there wasn't a lot. It was just one of those things where delays happened, and we filled as best we could, and we kept. And I hope that for the the customers sitting in the seats, they didn't feel or see any of the pain that I was feeling. But it was proper cold sweats. I think everything that tests you learn from. There isn't always another way of doing it. So there's two things that will go wrong at any event. Somebody will get something wrong, and something will break. Now, if it's only the kettle breaking, that's fine. But if it's the generator, or if it's the anchor on something in high wind, it can be a very different scenario. So there is no such thing as the perfect event. You will learn from every single one. But I think you learn over the years things like who to trust, who to rely upon, and where sometimes things you might not be able to 100% rely on them, and that's part of the risk. Anyone who's dealt with artists or celebs, they're not always going to turn up at the right time. They're not necessarily you can have contracts, you can have everything in place. You're not necessarily going to get all of those things. Sometimes things don't happen. Despite your plans, they don't happen the way they come about. So you look at what you could do differently, and sometimes you will come out and go, well, you know what, we're happy with what we did, and other times you come out and say, well, we're happy with what we did, but we think we could add to that again. Everything, in every event you learn from it. The key thing is learning from it and applying it, and seeing, was it a one-off, or is it symptomatic of something that you need to look at? Is this the start of something bigger, or is this literally a one-off?
But in 3 words, what makes someone an excellent event manager?
Organizer.
Yeah.
Communicator. Listener. magician. Made up the last one. But I think the first three are, it's a two-way process. If you just go in and bang on, we're doing this, you can alienate, you can not listen, and you can miss opportunities. It's a learning process working with people, and we can't do our events without the very important help of all of our stakeholders and the major players. But at 3 a.m. in the morning, it's the barrier crews, the toilet company, and the traffic management team that are sorting me out and getting me out of a potential hole. Yeah. So you're working with all people at all levels, and you've got to be able to develop that rapport. So you've got to be able to communicate. You've got to hear when people are telling you stuff that, I know you said you wanted it like this, Charlie, but it's not going to work. Square peg, round hole. Listen to me. So you go, yeah, okay. And then if you listen to people and they say, look, I can help you. I can do this for you. Fine, off you go. You sort that. But that, to be an event organizer, you need to be an organizer. You've got to get that bit. There are lots of different kinds of events. Lots of people who will mix marketing and comms and social skills as part of it, and we all have an amount of that. We all have amount of commercial stuff. We're all selling all the time. We're selling an idea when we're talking to someone. We're selling the idea of somebody working with you. You're doing deals and trying to get the best possible stuff out of a supplier. You're encouraging people to come and work with you. You're trying to get people to give you something extra that you want. You're constant. There are it's not just a straight I need this at this time element, but you've got to be able to organize you've got to be an organizer. You've got to be able to put those things in together. Putting on events is just doing lots and lots of things in more or less the right order, and definitely by the right time.
You've worked with a number of sporting events, but could you just tell us about those experiences and what's it actually like? You've sort of touched on it just a minute ago, but what's it actually like on working those different type of events that you've worked on?
A lot depends on sort of size, scale, and where you are. And if you look at the bigger stuff first, so when I'm looking after the finish line, the Great North Run, so I've got a dual role on that event. I am the author of the event safety plan, and I sit in a number of the working groups, but I'm the finish director on the day. So we've got a 1 week build and a 2 week D-rig on site, big greenfield site by the sea. About 90,000 spectators move through it during the day, and 45,000 people come over the finish line. And when it's all set up, you only get the whole thing linked up with about sort of 30 minutes to go, when you've linked all the final roads, and you've created your temporary arena on the coast road at the seafront at South Shields. We're live on BBC. We've got people packed deep on the banks. Everything is being closely looked at. And there's clearly a lot of pressure sitting behind there, but there's also, if with a good team, you've got that confidence of, we know we're ready, we know we're going to create something good and something special here. So you've got the nerves and the anticipation, and it's it can be it's different depending on what your role is. So at our event, you'll tend to have sort of an A or a B role. So it might be, if it's not your event and you're not the actual event director, you might be the start manager, the course manager, the finish manager, looking after a work team. Or it's, at some events you might come in and just be part of the crew. Then you're sort of helping out. So obviously the level of responsibility changes. I like it when I know more about an event. So I will go wherever I'm needed and work on something, but I like it when I can really understand something. I think the thing about any event organizer, you like to know as much about the setting that you're in, so that you can then you can be as useful as you possibly can. And it's always great when you've got decent weather, but you can be the experience of one event and one setting can change massively if you've got you might have nice, clear, bright skies, but you might be worried about the warmth. It's just going to affect the runners coming in. You might have clear skies, but you might have some high winds, and you're thinking, right, is our wind action plan now going to be kicking in, and what are we going to do about this? You might have, it might be nice and lovely and calm, but you've been soaked non-stop for 3 days. Everybody works differently when the hoods are up and the caps are on, and their sight lines have gone, and they're tired and they're wet, and then you've got you're worrying about ground conditions. So there's a whole load of factors that you take into that, and then you've got the externals as well. What's the state of the nation? We're all going to be putting events on in very different settings as they restart in significant numbers, apart from the fledgling and green shoots that we're seeing now. But we've had that before. If you're putting an event on or around the time of something like a terror attack. So we put on the Great Manchester Run 6 days after the arena attack, which killed 23 in Manchester. And what we said to the to the city then is, look, if you want us, we're here. If you don't want us, we won't be here. And what Manchester and the people decided was they wanted the event to be there. And we were there in a very different format on that Sunday. And we were a stage for people to do what they wanted to do, to show solidarity, to run for the cause, just to be there. Some didn't want to be there, and we just made ourselves available. And that was a very, very different experience. The levels of security and the levels of emotion and the very real grief that was in the city. So there's no one way you're going to feel at an event. And that's the fantastic thing about events as well. That's part of what keeps us coming back. They are they're so different and they're so challenging. And the thing that's kept me in my role for such a long time, the Great Run Company, is that it is it's constantly challenging. Large numbers, different venues, outdoor conditions, dealing with those changes in sort of national alert status, all of those things that I'm just trying to constantly put on the best thing you can for stakeholders, for customers, for exhibitors, for spectators.
Do you feel any pressure when you put these large events on?
Of course, you'd be I think there would be something wrong if you don't feel pressure. Pressure is part of it. Pressure helps you realise we're a deadline business. We're a deadline business. What we have to do is find a way to deal with that pressure, and you deal with that pressure by planning. You deal with that pressure by sharing and delegating. All roads can't lead to one person. We write big, complicated event safety plans because they need to be big and complicated, but we have to find ways of simplifying that message and getting it out to people. So we have to get to a point where we can't say, right, we're making no more changes to the plans from sort of 2 weeks out. You might try to do that. I will always try and think, right, we're not going to change anything now, but you have to change. You have to respond. If things change, if you get new roadworks, if the threat level changes, if somebody drops out, if whatever might happen, the weather forecast changes, you've got to change and respond all the time. Your risk assessments will change. Your plans will get tweaked. But you have to get to that point of saying, right, now is the time that I need to share my plans with you. I need to get my plans into your head, whether you're running a huge sector for me, you're one of my key suppliers, you're my event control officer, you're my site safety advisor, or you're one of my volunteers. And whether I'm doing that personally myself or whether I'm passing that on to somebody else to pass on to somebody else, we have to share that so that on the day I can do my briefing the night before, which is normally standing up in a room full of 100, and now it's probably going to be sat in front of a screen like this with a lot of other screens, and saying to people, right, this is what you need to know, and if it's to do with a start, you go to Joe. If it's to do with the course, you go to Chris. And and we're sharing it like that so that our people know to go to, they know the teams they're working in, they know who they're going to rely on the day, who's going to support them, and they know who their line manager is, and they know what to do. They know how to troubleshoot. And then ideally on the day, you should be able to sit in a hotel room with curtains drawn and your lamp on and your laptop open and your schedules and your radio, and run the gig from there. If you need to. I mean, I don't usually, as event director, sit in event control. We have event control officer, we have teams in there, we have what we need, and I'm floating about on the ground, and I can get to a point if I need to. That's the way that we've built our events up. They work well for us. Lots of different ways that people approach event controls, but there'll be times in the day when the pressure does build. Sometimes it can be relatively serene. You can go into something and feel quite calm because. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time. I've been working on sort of 12 to 20 events a year for a long time, and some of them are pretty big. I know what tens of thousands of people look like, but equally we do some events which are much more personal and smaller. So when we do our Great Swim events, they'll have a lot of people during the day. The Great North Swim in Windermere, 10,000. The Great East Swim down in Suffolk near Ipswich. That's a smaller affair. It's a few thousand, and they're broken down into groups of sort of 200 or 300 a day. So 200-300 a time across the day. So it's much smaller, and so you're actually talking face to face to your customers, which we do. You always find as you walk around the city during the day, you are exchanging bits and pieces, and you pick up from the crowd. You watch what they're doing, and if my crowd looks and feels relaxed and looks happy, then I know they're feeling okay. If people look anxious at your event, there's probably something going wrong.
But how crucial is it for the communication between all your stakeholders? Because you must have put so much trust into your team and the stakeholders as well to make everything work.
Yeah, you've got to. There'll be different levels of involvement. So you've got, you might have your TV partner. You've got your local authorities. There might be some private venues involved there as well, and you'll have your sponsors. And everybody has got the people they're looking after. So within a local authority, we might have at the higher client level, some of our directors talking to the directors there, and then at the operational level, there'll be the likes of me talking to the the event teams within a local authority. So you're boxing things off in different ways, and sometimes if you're dealing with something that is major, so for example, the response post the arena attack in Manchester, you're cutting across a lot of levels there. So you go across a lot of levels, and a lot more people come in. So the size of the planning meeting we held in Manchester Town Hall, the final kind of the emergency SAG that signed that off, was enormous, with more high-ranking police officers than I'm used to seeing in the room. We then have our commercial team looking after sponsors, and then you've got your sort of client management team looking after the what the exhibitors and people on the ground want. It's just everybody knowing who their point of contact is and trying to work that out so that people know what their routes are to troubleshoot and to fix. So, for example, looking after exhibitor space at a run, I might be attending some of those site recce's with our a member of our commercial team, one of our account managers, and some of the sponsors or their activation agencies beforehand. But then by the time we get around to the day, I'll have pulled back from that, and I'll then put in one of our senior crew to act as the event village manager, who then forms the point of contact on the day. So when the exhibitor packs go out, everyone knows who they're talking to. They know who's going to meet them on the day. They know who's going to sign off their structure. They know who's going to connect their power up if they want that. So that again, you can be involved in the planning, but as you get closer and closer, you have to step back a bit more and then put other people forward. It's not just stepping back so that no one's got anywhere to go. People have always got to have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
But it's finding who that person is, and the clearer and smoother you can make that flow of information, and if you can answer people's questions before they've thought of asking them, you make life easier.
You mentioned just previously that you lecture or guest lecture at some universities, but how do you get involved with that, or do you like giving back to the unis that you've been studied at, or you studied at?
So because we work in so many cities up and down the land, quite a lot of them have universities that have event management degrees, and we've just established things, and it's great for us to be able to go to university and talk to students and see talk to the next wave of event professionals coming through. We have people come and volunteer with us and crew with us as well. So we'll give them a chance to do some voluntary work, and then they share their merit. We'll then take them on as crew. Bits of experience, and it's also good for us to be able to bounce some ideas around with academics as well. So there's a couple of times that I've taken problematic elements to people at different universities and said, right, how would you look at this? How would you approach it? Because an academic setting is very different to a commercial setting. So it's another way of looking at it. And certainly taking something back to Derby one year with Eddie Grant, who works there, who is a very well known and incredibly well accomplished an experienced event safety practitioner in his own right, as well as teaching there and now at Cumbria. Eddie was able to look at something and kind of unpack it and put it in a different way for me and let me take it back and completely break down a barrier that I had with something to do with the venue, just by approaching it in a different way. So it works both ways, and it's a good link for us. We like it at the Great Run Company. It's a good link for us to be associated with with places learning, with the future producers of of the next round of event professionals as well. The event talk sessions that I've been doing during lockdown, which came out of I'd already agreed to do a couple of lectures, and from there it was clear, talking to some of them afterwards, that it was going to be a very different experience for that I was then looking at just final year graduates and what they were coming out with and what was happening, and also people who are trying to secure their placements for next year. So we set up these event talks, talking to people in groups of like 10 or 12, and just a chance for people to talk about getting on, what they might do. And I've picked up on things. There have been some interesting things within that. So it's not just a case of me sharing what I know. It's me hearing how other people are seeing stuff, and how the next wave of event professionals are looking at what's happening now, looking at what's gone before them, and either saying, yes, that's really good, we can build on that, or, well, why do you do it like this? Surely we could try it like that.
obviously it's quite a difficult time for myself graduating and other people in entering the sports the event industry. But have you got any advice for them or slash me? And what would you do if you're in the same position right now?
It's not a case of, it's not who you know rather than what you know. It's what you know and who you know. If you haven't got the skills and haven't got the abilities, and you can obviously develop those as you can develop networks, you're not going to get on. It's a case of both. And I would hope that people, competency, competency is all important in what we do. We're standing up and saying we're going to deliver, and then we do deliver in terms of both, experience, return on investment, and and safety. So we need to make sure that we push competency. But networking you can do now. You can work on your competency now. It's not just about getting all those free certificates that you can get from all the various things being offered online at the moment. Not there's anything wrong with those at all, but there's other things you can do as well. You could look at event scenarios. You could learn. You could apply some of the stuff that you've learned at university and say, well, if I, how might that apply in the real world? What are the gaps in my knowledge? You could do a skills analysis on yourself and say, okay, this is if I look at what actually goes into putting on an event and what we're taught at university, what might I not have? Could I benefit when these things are available again? Could I benefit from some first aid in the workplace training? If I don't have that, could I get that? What about some manual handling stuff? Could I be more useful on site if I knew how to drive a forklift? Perhaps in practical skills, but equally there might be other ones. You think, well, might my project management skills improve if I learn more about that? What about if I'm going to go and work for a smaller agency where you might do a mix of events and comm stuff, or you might be somebody who likes the whole social and the comm side as much as they like the event delivery side? Can I develop that side as well? So you can develop skills, you can learn about things that will never go away. Anybody who is either at university or coming out of it should be reading the Health Protection Act, should be reading the government guidance, should be understanding how that's applied, should be looking at how people are applying it, looking at the case studies out there, looking at how the different industries from cinema to construction have worked with government. Some of the government guidance that comes straight from the government, others comes out through industry groups. So the Event Industry Forum wrote the outdoor events advice that came out on the 9th of July. It was it was the British film industry and the cinema industry that worked on producing stuff for drive-ins. The accepted way for how to work on a construction site has come from the construction the side of the world. So some of the links to advice are gov.uk, some external ones. So just read around those because that's what that's the new setting that we're working in. But all the other stuff hasn't gone away. So the need to, the Health and Safety at Work Act hasn't changed. Gravity is still 100% operational all the time. So if you're up somewhere at all, you need to know about you working at height.
Yeah,
We've still got the same issues on site of vehicles, pedestrians, the safe way we work things, working the emergency services, looking at the new things that are coming in, like Martin's Law, as a result of the arena attack and the demands which are being accepted now by a number of councils and pushed, but will come into law, that will see some changes in the next maybe 18 months or so to venues and event planners. So there's a lot we can do. And it's at the same time just try to tell people you're doing it, try to establish rapport and relationships. But there will be people who leave the industry. There will be people who leave the industry and decide that their skills they're going to go and use those somewhere else because they want that surety. So there may be some opportunities created that way. There may well be a need for people to find other things to do for a while if they really want to get into events and hang on. But this isn't the first time that's happened. That's what I did. I couldn't get into events straight away. I came out in 1990 when there was a graduate recession going on. And before there hadn't been one. You just you went to university, you left university, you picked your job. That was how it was, and it wasn't like that anymore. So it took me a while to get into what I wanted to do, and people might have to look around, work differently. I fully get that people have got debts. They've got to pay rent. Some of them might have mortgages to pay. It's not not all students are age 21. Some are older and already got other commitments. It can be difficult, and there might be some people who find their plans are really challenged. But this also might, for the more entrepreneurial, this might create a different route and other opportunities. This might see some of the next round of promoters coming out. It also might see, there's no one bit of the events world that's not suffering. One of the areas, though, that a lot of graduates don't tend to look at normally, not that it's a particularly buoyant one to go for at the moment, but is the supplier side of things. There's only a couple of suppliers that I know that have got event management graduates working for them. And I've asked a few people, and they say, well, people just don't apply for our stuff. They don't look at it. I think a lot of people go and do an event management degree and then think, right, I'm an event manager.
Yeah.
I'm on this side. Those same skills and things apply on the supply side. They have our suppliers have account managers, and they have people working out, doing all the planning, and often there'll be technology in there as well. But the people who build structures, coming to deliver services to your event, they've got to be planned and organised exactly the same way as the rest of the production.
Yeah. Again, so I think the advice you gave is valuable, and I think people like me and other colleagues that I know will take that on board for definitely. So thank you for the advice.
There's no one way to ride this out.
Yeah, I know.
We don't know what the end is. We don't know. We might actually never kind of realize what the end is, because we'll just get used to doing things a different way, and we'll have moved on in the same way as we've moved on quite a lot since we had from 23rd of March. So it's ride out as best you can, and everybody's personal circumstances will be different. So a lot of the standard career networking advice doesn't apply, but equally a lot of it does. It's just applying it to your circumstances and seeing what you can find there. But also, I think as well, I can see people on LinkedIn feeling the pressure that they haven't done every single course that everybody else has done. Yes, it is useful to be able to show what you've been doing in this period, but this period isn't a period that ends on a set date. It's going to keep changing. I certainly, I often sit on the other side of the table to interviewees, and I wouldn't, if I was talking about this period now to somebody in a year's time, I wouldn't expect them to account for 40 hours of CPD and learning and webinars, every week, because that's just not sustainable. Yeah. But if there's some things in there, you can see that you did this, you looked at. But your own research, your own work, your own investigation to things, whether that's that's the fledgling ideas for your own event concept or idea or service or business, or whether it's research around things so that you've got a better understanding of how this guidance is going to apply to different settings, or you just thinking, right, for these weeks I'm going to take a look. I'm not really sure where I want to go, so I'm going to take a look at the indoor events world, and I'm going to see what I can find out, see who might have some time for a chat with me or willing to share a bit, then I might spend a bit of time in the sporting world or the theatre world or whatever. At the moment, one thing people have got is time, and there's quite a lot of people who are willing to use that, willing to share. So connect, establish relationships. You never know where they'll take you. Is that there's no such thing as a perfect event. And coupled with that, the sooner that all of us realize that you need other people to help you out, and that the fact that you're the event manager, all roads can't lead to you, learning how to delegate, learning how to share responsibility is a very important thing, and accepting that not everything is going to go as you want it to go. That doesn't mean the event's going to fail, doesn't mean you're going to fail, but it's accepting the very nature and essence of a live event, and then working with that and embracing it rather than battling against it.
That's fair to say, I think.
And buy some waterproofs. Really good ones.
Especially up north, huh?
Yeah.
But thank you for being interviewed. It's been a pleasure. And you've provided you've provided fantastic content for the series, and I just want to thank you for that. So
hey, you're welcome. One of the things about event people is we do like talking about our job, so so that's why now everyone should use the time, find people who want to talk like this and pick their brains.
Well, I hope you and your family will keep well, and we'll speak soon.
Great. Thanks, Ollie.
Thank you.